Without objection, letters will be entered into the record. Chair now recognizes Ms. Green from Georgia for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to express in the strongest words possible that I support the police, and we should be supporting the police here in our nation's capital because it's our nation's capital that has one of the highest murder rates in our country, one of the worst crime records in our nation's history, and is an absolute embarrassment to our country. I'd also like to remind everyone that one of our own colleagues was carjacked months ago here in Washington, D.C. We also just had a former Trump admin official die because he was shot here in our nation's capital. And many Hill staffers themselves have been attacked just walking the city streets. This is an ongoing crime epidemic here in our nation's capital, and it's appalling. We should be supporting police officers, not attacking Americans' gun rights. While all of us walk around under the protection of good guys with guns, Capitol Police carry those AR-15s and guard all of us, but yet Democrats would love to take away the gun rights of American citizens and blame guns that never get up by themselves and shoot people. Murder is already a crime. People kill people, and they don't just kill them with guns. They kill them with knives. They kill them with fists. They kill them with objects. They strangle them. But yet I just listened to one of my colleagues say that we need to disarm Americans in order to somehow stop crime in Washington, D.C. We should
will the gentlelady yield?
No, I will not. We should be protecting and supporting police officers. I also heard President Trump come under attack once again because Democrats have nothing else to say to defend their own policies but attack President Trump. I'd like to remind everyone that it was Antifa, BLM, by the way, supported by Democrats. BLM as an organization raised millions and millions of dollars on Act Blue, the Democrat fundraising site. And then BLM riots across America that were endorsed heavily by Democrats and apologized and said mostly peaceful protest by media who are totally defending Democrats constantly. These riots caused $2 billion in damage across America. I'd also like to remind everyone that in 2017, when President Trump was inaugurated, that rioters nearly burned down Washington, D.C. That's right, nearly burned down the city here. But oh, we've got to attack President Trump every single day. You know, it was also Democrats that said things like, I don't know why there aren't uprisings everywhere. That was our former Speaker of the House. Our current Vice President, before the election of 2020, said, we will not stop. We won't stop. Talking about these BLM riots. Also, one of our Democrat colleagues is on video. By the way, all of this is on video, their statements. And she was talking about Trump supporters, and she said, when you see them, you make a crowd, surround them wherever they are. These are the statements that come from our Democrat colleagues, but they want to attack President Trump every single day and take away police officers' ability to stop criminals and arrest criminals and protect our city streets, our community streets, and our nation's capital. And I'm sick and tired of it. It is ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. So, Mr. Chairman, I would like to say I support the amendment that you just spoke on and introduced. And I would urge my colleagues to pay attention very carefully. The American people are paying attention, and they're not stupid. Just because you have a little microphone you can talk in doesn't mean that you can sit here and lie to the American people every single day. They can read the crime statistics. We all know you can't walk around this city without being in danger of being robbed or carjacked or murdered maybe. My goodness, how horrible is that? So let's support our police officers. Let's vote for good things to help citizens in this city. And Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Will the gentlelady yield for a question?
No, I will not yield to one of your stupid questions that are always attacking me and attacking President Trump.
How about a mediocre question?
No, I don't want it. I do not want
an
your
excellent question.
No.
A smart question.
No, my time.
An intelligent question.
You have no smart or intelligent questions.
Chair now recognizes Dr. Foxx from North Carolina for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Comer, we share an interest in effective management of the Federal Employees Health Benefits FEHB program and in delivering the best low-cost health care possible to Americans. I chair the Committee on Education and the Workforce, of which you are a member, and we've spent this Congress focused intently on improving transparency in health care and addressing the practices of pharmacy benefit managers, PBMs, in order to deliver lower health care costs to patients and plans. That's why I am proud of the House's broad bipartisan support for the Lower Cost, More Transparency Act, legislation that will give employers the information they need to make informed health care purchasing decisions on behalf of their employees. And I look forward to continuing to work with our Senate colleagues to enact it this year. As a conservative, I'm always hesitant to invoke the powers of the federal government, particularly to intervene in private business' ability to design their own contracts and determine fair compensation for their services. Overreach is all too easy, and I'm particularly concerned with such interventions in the commercial health care market. Congress does have a unique responsibility to ensure the FEHB program delivers the highest quality and lowest cost for federal workers. Tweaks to that program can reveal the consequences of proposals that some may desire to expand more widely. That is precisely what is before us today. The application of H.R. 6283, the Delinking Revenue from Unfair Gouging Act, or the Drug Act, to the FEHB program. The bill applies 3 significant changes to contracting for prescription drugs by FEHB plans: delinking, a spread pricing ban, and an anti-steering provision. Delinking is intended to ensure that there's no incentive for a PBM to select a higher list price drug in lieu of a lower net price drug. We want to ensure that PBMs share the same incentives to deliver the lowest net cost to the plans they serve. We also must ensure bureaucrats do not have too much authority to dictate how PBMs can be compensated. It's particularly important to tread carefully on spread pricing and on anti-steering provisions that may take away plan sponsors' ability to lower cost. Employers who act as fiduciaries and benefit providers for their employees deserve to have a full array of tools available to design their plans to benefit patients and keep premiums low. All of these changes are motivated by good intentions, but it's extremely important to move cautiously and avoid unintended consequences. While I'm aware that the Office of Personnel Management has stated that these reforms may reduce drug spending and premiums in the FEHB program, I believe it's important that the Congressional Budget Office share its analysis of the full financial impact of the legislation in short order. It's also very important that, as this language applicable to FEHB is considered, there are additional efforts to ensure the text is perfected to address potential areas of improvement. I'm aware that there is too little free about the healthcare market in America. My North Star is restoring free market incentives and ensuring that the employer-sponsored healthcare so many Americans value is on a stable foundation for the future. Out of a willingness to work with Chairman Comer on giving a trial to these policies in the unique FEHB market, I am voting today to support H.R. 6283. I'm open to additional good faith.
2 million encounters and releases under your watch. So not including the Title 42 expulsions, not including violent criminals. Of those 2 million plus that you've encountered and released, how many have you told to go home?
Congressman, individuals who are released are placed in immigration enforcement proceedings under the law where they can make their claim for relief. If their claim for relief is not satisfied, they are subject to removal from the United States.
Right, subject to removal sounds very different than actually removed. So I'm not interested in the process. I'm not interested in what people are subject to. 2 million people encountered, and released, not the expulsions under Title 42, not the criminals, how many of those people have you deported?
So, Congressman, a few points. Number one.
Just how many of the people? I just want to know how many. It's just a number.
Congressman, we are dealing with a completely broken immigration system.
I get it. No, Mr. Secretary, I'm not going to let you burn my 5 minutes. Do you know the answer? Do you know the number of people out of that 2 million that you've removed that aren't criminals?
I do know that we have removed more aggravated felons.
Right, I'm not asking about them. I've caveated that away, because here's what I'm sort of getting and what your non-responsiveness is demonstrating. The Mayorkas doctrine is this. If you show up at the border and get released into the country, if you don't commit a specific aggravated felony, which, by the way, doesn't include a lot of assault and battery, doesn't include a lot of bad domestic violence, but if you're not one of the people who commit those crimes, you get to stay forever. Is that a fair characterization of your doctrine?
No, that is false.
Then tell me how many you're sending home.
No, that is false.
Okay, well, but you don't know the number of how many you've sent home. Here's another number. 1.2 million people today have been through your entire process, right? They've been through what you call a removal proceeding is just an amnesty dance. Because after the 1.2 million people get an order from the judge saying that they don't have a basis to be here, you still don't remove them. Like, what's your plan to remove those people?
Congressman, that is false.
Okay, how many of them then? Just give me the number.
Congressman, in this country, there are between 11 and 12 million.
Right, but I'm asking about a
individuals.
subset that you won't send home. And the reason you're smirking about it, and the reason you won't answer my question, is because everybody gets the joke. And the sad thing is, it's not just us here, it's the cartels who get the joke too. And so now, what you've done to execute this Mayorkas doctrine, where so long as you don't commit a crime, you get to stay here and burden our hospitals, burden our schools, burden our social services, burden our jails. You've sent the message to the cartels, and then you've taken this app and you've digitized illegal immigration and you've scaled it to the moon. Like, this app that you've got everybody downloading is like the Disney Fast Pass into the country, never to be subject to actual removal, just removal proceedings, as you call them. That app doesn't do any search of their criminal history in their home country, does it?
Congressman, I disagree with everything you have said.
Well, I'm sure, but just answer the question. Does the app that you are out there promoting do any search of people's criminal history in their home country?
Congressman, Customs and Border Protection screens and vets individuals whom they encounter.
Your
thoroughly.
app, it either has the functionality to test their criminal history in their home country, or it doesn't. By the way, if it did, you'd have already told me. It doesn't. And then the other epic failure of this that's empowered the cartels is that in these processing centers you've set up in other countries to just wave them all in at a rapid pace, you've had to shut them down in Nuevo Laredo because the cartels were standing outside extorting people. Isn't that right?
Congressman, that is false.
Oh, really? So why did you shut down that facility in Nuevo Laredo?
Congressman, the point of safe, orderly, and lawful pathways is to reduce the number of encounters at our southwest border.
But wait a second. You've just shifted those encounters, because right now, for the first time in modern history, more people are showing up at the ports of entry than running through some bush in Yuma, Arizona. And the reason they're showing up at the ports of entry is because you've got the turnstile open, where so long as they've gone and downloaded this app, you just let them in. I got one final question for you, and it's an important one. Is Mexico an ally in this fight against illegal immigration?
Yes, it is.
So, I mean, it's hilarious and somewhat troubling that you say that, because, like, I'm looking at the El Chapo trial where President Nieto took a $100 million bribe from the Sinaloa cartel. Do you think that the subsequent presidents following Nieto weren't offered a bribe by the cartel or didn't take the bribe?
Congressman, I disagree with everything you have said.
Right, but you can disagree all you want, but what you won't provide is any number. And when you sit there and just kind of ostensibly disagree without any facts, it shows people what the real gig is. The Mexican government is captive to the cartels. They are doing the bidding of the cartels, and based on your response today, so are you.
Gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Texas is recognized.
I thank the chairman. Secretary Mayorkas, on April 28th, 2022, I ask you, quote, will you testify under oath right now? Do we have operational control, yes or no, end quote. You responded with, quote, yes, we do, period, end quote. I then asked, we have operational control of the borders? You responded, quote, yes, we do, period, end quote. Followed up, I said, I read to you the definition of operational control. I actually held up this chart, operational control as defined under the Secure Fence Act. Put it up for plain reading, plain as day. I put up the second part of the same statute, which defines operational control. Means the prevention of all unlawful entries in the United States, including entries by terrorists, other unlawful aliens, instruments of terrorism, narcotics, and other contraband. I said to you, do you stand by in your testimony that we have operational control in light of this definition? You responded with, quote, I do, period, end quote. Earlier, you testified I didn't give you a chance to finish. Yet you specifically, when asked and held up a statute defining exactly what operational control meant under the Secure Fence Act, you said, quote, I do. I believe that was purposeful. I believe you want the American people to believe we have operational control of the border when we very clearly do not. Less than a month later, in Homeland Security, you testified, quote, under that strict definition, this country has never had operational control. This year, House Homeland Security, then Border Patrol Chief Raul Ortiz testified before the Homeland Committee that DHS did not have operational control of the border, either by the statutory definition or not. Now that is an honest answer. In the Senate Judiciary Committee, shortly thereafter, you testified with respect to the definition of operational control, I do not use the definition that appears in the Secure Fence Act. And the Secure Fence Act provides statutorily that operational control is defined as preventing all unlawful entries in the United States, and by that definition, no administration has ever had operational control. If you will recall when you testified here in front of me when I asked that question, when you very clearly stated, we do have operational control, when presented with the actual definition of operational control, you didn't hesitate, you said, I do, and you in fact then referred back and said, I believe that my predecessors would have said the same thing. I asked Chad Wolf that question in this room, and Chad said, well, no, we didn't use that framing to say we have operational control. We're striving to achieve operational control, but you didn't do that. You looked straight at the American people, straight at me, straight at every person on this committee, and said, we have operational control. Why?
Congressman, 2 points. One, you did not let me complete my answer. Two,
hold on. Let's give me your second point. Go ahead.
Thank you. Two, the Secure Fence Act defines operational control as not a single individual crosses the border.
I'm aware. I read it, and I read it to you, and you read it, and in fact, you said, I do. You didn't hesitate. You didn't say, I do. I need to explain what I mean by I do. You said, I do, over and over again. And here's the problem with that. This is a pattern. Did you lie another time when you said on September 24th, 2021 at a press conference, quote, we know that those images painfully conjured up the worst elements of our nation's ongoing battle against systemic racism when responding to the alleged whipping incident by the Border Patrol agents who report to you. When in fact, on October 22nd, 2022, it was reported that 2.5 hours before that press conference, Marcia Espinoza, Assistant Secretary of DHS Public Affairs, emailed you and CC'd other DHS leadership, alerting you all that the photographer who took the images did not see any whipping occur, invalidating the initial claim. And it wasn't until May of this year that you corrected the record to say, well, let me just correct you right there because actually the investigation concluded the whipping did not occur. Don Rosenberg, in this very room, testified a few weeks ago that you lie. It is a perpetual pattern, and the fact is there are real people that are impacted by that. We have now had, since you testified, we have had something like 200 people a day dying from fentanyl deaths, which would amount to 90,000 people. I showed you before, when you were here, the lost voices of fentanyl, the hundreds, the thousands of Americans that continue to die, 90,000 since you came into this.
On this vote, the yeas are 214 and the nays are 216. The resolution is not adopted. For what purpose does the gentleman from Utah seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I have a motion at the desk.
The clerk will report the motion.
Mr. Moore of Utah moves to reconsider the vote on adoption of House Resolution 863.
The question is on the motion to reconsider. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman from Utah.
Mr. Speaker, I request the yeas and nays.
The yeas and nays are requested. Those favoring a vote by the yeas and the nays will rise. A sufficient number having risen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, further proceedings on this question are postponed. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, the unfinished business is the vote on the motion to suspend the rules and pass H.R. 72.
This system has been broken.
Thank you so much for being here.
Decades,
I appreciate it.
And we have a
solution
bipartisan solution that will deliver much-needed resources and much-needed changes to the broken system. It is a bipartisan solution, and the president was very strong on that point.
I want you to listen to what the head of the Border Patrol
That
Union
bipartisan solution,
said. I should say he was with
solution
Donald Trump when he made these tabled.
I think that's probably a generous way to put it right now because of
my
deep
agents,
Republican
they're mad as hell.
opposition.
Absolutely
Given that,
mad.
CNN is
that
reporting
President
last
Biden
week
went to
that
Brownsville,
the administration
Texas,
is considering
rather
executive
than going
action
to Arizona,
that would
rather than
block
going to
migrants
San Diego,
claiming
California,
asylum
rather than
if
coming
they
to Eagle
illegally
Pass,
cross into the
Texas,
United States.
which has been the
Can
epicenter.
you tell us exactly what's on the table?
Dana,
Did
we
President Biden get a
consider
full picture of the
options
crisis
at all
the border
times.
during this trip?
That's the responsibility of good government. Brownsville and administrative action is no substitute for an enduring solution. Accounted when we take administrative actions, as we have done a number of times, we are challenged in court. Legislation how dynamic the enduring solution, the challenge of migration is, not through because we convinced Mexico to increase its border enforcement, customs and border protection by 1,500 arrive at the southern border. The numbers proposes in Brownsville we cannot through administrative action add 4,300 asylum officers enforcement so that we can work through the backlog, given the landscape of the system into an efficient and well-working challenge, which it hasn't been migration for more than 3 decades. A very dynamic and ever-changing one.
You to listen to what Texas Governor Greg Abbott told me on this show about
from
the
Brownsville,
idea
Texas,
of whether or
is
not
the fact that
legislation
Congress
is needed.
needs.
Take a listen.
The fact of the matter is, there are laws on the books passed by Congress of the United States right now that authorize the executive branch to deny illegal entry. The president does not need new laws. The president needs a backbone to make sure that he enforces the immigration laws that are already on the books.
Couldn't be more wrong. Couldn't be more wrong. And as a matter of fact, former President Trump tried to close the border, and it was enjoined in the courts and never saw the light of day. This coming from an individual who is purposefully refusing to coordinate, communicate, collaborate with other officials and trying to wreak havoc in other cities and states across the country. That is not a model of governance, and he couldn't be more wrong.
Back to the executive action. You said it's not an enduring solution, and I don't think anybody would disagree with that. But in a time of crisis, you tend to deal with how to put even a Band-Aid on a situation in the short term. Is there executive action that you are considering now to try to do that?
Let me give a powerful example of something that we did accomplish. We encountered a historic number of individuals at the southern border in December of 2023. Mexico had ceased its enforcement operations, and its enforcement agency had been unfunded. President Biden reached out to President Lopez Obrador of Mexico and spoke of the need for enforcement to resume. Then he dispatched Secretary Blinken and me to meet with our Mexican counterparts and echo that important message. Mexico did, and the numbers in January of this year dropped more than 50%. So there are things that we can do.
Is changing the asylum laws at all by executive action one of those things?
Well, we have done that in a limited circumstance under one of the regulations that we passed. That is being challenged in the courts. What we have is a three-part solution that this legislation performs. It not only raises the asylum bar, but speeds up the process from 5 to 7 years to under 6 months. That is an extraordinary change and will impact intending migrants' behavior.
But it's not going anywhere. That's the reality.
Well, the reality is that Congress needs to act, and President Biden said that Congress needs to get a spine.
I want to ask about, speaking of Congress, what's happening with you in Congress. You became the first cabinet secretary to be impeached in more than 150 years. That happened last month. The Senate is now deciding whether or not to hold a trial. Do you think that the Senate should just try to dismiss the charges, or do you want the opportunity to defend yourself?
Dana, I'm going to let the Senate, of course, execute its responsibilities as it thinks best in the service of our country. I am going to focus on work.
Donald Trump yesterday suggested that on the campaign trail that President Biden has a deliberate strategy to let migrants across the border because he says President Biden wants to, quote, overthrow the United States and, quote, nullify the will of the actual American voters and establish a new base of power that gives them control for generations. What's your reaction to that?
Dana, I can't comment on those remarks because the Hatch Act prevents me from speaking of campaign politics. I'm incredibly proud to serve this president, an extraordinary president who's focused on working for the American people.
Let me ask you in a different context that you can answer. Is it the policy of the Biden administration to allow as many migrants to come across the border in order to change the political dynamics, the electoral dynamics of America?
Of course not. And the facts indicate that that is absolutely false. Since May of this year, of last year, we have removed or returned more individuals than in any year since 2015, and we haven't even run 12 months. Over the last 3 years, we've removed, returned, or expelled more people than in all 4 years of the prior administration. You know, the facts matter, and the rhetoric we should brush aside.
Real quick, I have to ask you about what's going on in Texas, the largest wildfire in history, already killed 2 people, destroyed up to 500 structures. How dangerous is the situation? What's the federal government doing? And do you think that, the climate crisis has anything to do with this?
Dana, it's something that we're monitoring every minute of every day. We have devoted funds, equipment, personnel. The frontline personnel are so incredibly brave. Our hearts break to those, of course, who've lost their lives, their families, who've lost their homes. More than 1 million acres have burned. We are in winter, and this is the largest fire in Texas history. We are seeing unprecedented blizzards in the north of California. We, as a country and as a world, have to be ready for the increasing effects of extreme weather caused by climate change. It's a remarkable phenomenon, and it will manifest itself in the days to come, and we have to prepare for it now.
I'm going to make a very hard turn right now to something a lot lighter than that, which is Saturday Night Live. I'm not sure if you saw when you were coming in this morning that you and I both got the SNL treatment last night. I'll play a clip.
I was with Joe Biden for the past weekend, and whew, he wiped me out.
Okay, so you feel he's up to the job?
Dana, I was just with him, and behind closed doors, he's a dynamo. Joe went into beast mode. He said, we gotta tighten this border. Look how easy I can cross it. Then he parkoured up to the top of the border wall. He front flipped into the Rio Grande and came back up with a fish in his mouth.
Does that happen every day?
We all need a little comic relief now and then, and I thought George Clooney did a terrific job.
You know, obviously this is art, but they do this because they try to make a point that there is a discussion in the zeitgeist. There is a reason that they did a whole thing about Joe Biden's age. Do you want to have a real statement about it, about what you witnessed?
They should spend a bit of time with Joe Biden like I have done. Let me share something with you. I prepare a lot for meetings with him and engagements with him because he's remarkably detail-oriented, probing, and operationally focused.
Okay, but no fishing in the Rio Grande?
Not for me.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mr. Secretary. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Dana.